going to start the recording then, and we can just kind of work into
Okay.
presentation. So
All right.
this is a climate change forum from Omni Center for Peace, Justice, and Ecology, and our presenter today is Michael Cockram. And Mike, go ahead and reintroduce yourself. Alberto is here. We'll bring Alberto in,
All right.
and then we will then go ahead and introduce yourself, and we will let you begin.
Okay. My name is Michael Cockram. I'm a Omni board member, and I am a local architectural designer and very interested in climate issues. And my project for Omni is focused on sort of transforming the landscape, the grounds, into a more sustainable um, landscape. So that's what I'll be talking about today. My in my architectural practice, I'm involved in energy efficiency, passive house, passive solar, that sort of thing. That's become my focus. But I also love plants, so uh, that's what I'll be talking about today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have unfortunately, I have a note on my main screen about that the meeting is being recorded. I'm going to try to get rid of that.
Oh yeah, you just kill
My
that.
cursor doesn't show up on that screen, so I'm going to have to go into. Um, let's see. Oh well. Um, so the title of the my talk today is "A Living Landscape from Lawn to Native Garden." So I got a lot of inspiration from this book. If you're interested in looking at a kind of an overview of how to transform um, uh, kind of sterile, more sterile lawn type landscape into a kind of vibrant landscape. And one of the main things is biodiversity, of course. So Western culture tends toward monoculture in our agriculture and in our landscape. So it's most popular to have a lawn that is, one kind of grass and pristine in a certain boring kind of way. So, um, but this book is a good resource in terms of giving you kind of theory and practices you can do in a residential kind of format. So just looking at the image on the left, you see this kind of, there is some lawn there, if you'll notice, but there are many layers to the landscape, and I think it's very important to think about the landscape in terms of its layers, and that's one really good thing this book does is look at all the different pieces of the landscape. So the canopy, the understory, things like shrubs and lower level plants, and then the ground layer, what's on the ground. And so the image on the right just shows some of the things that are supported by a more diverse landscape. Uh, Birds can, forage in the lawn, but you also need shrubs for birds and insects, and uh, things like frogs in the upper left. It's kind of camouflage there, but so having this kind of diversity, and also the just in kind of the architecture or landscape architecture, making outdoor rooms. The image on the left, if you just imagine this as a lawn, it would be quite boring and undefined. But having this multi-layered landscape gives you the opportunity to make spaces and make places rather than, just this uniform plane of grass. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got to where I am and the things I learned that sort of contribute to my thoughts on landscape and architecture, and how we should develop those things. So I taught for about 13 years at the University of Oregon School of Architecture as an adjunct professor. And one of the things I did was start a summer program in Italy that looked at the cultural landscape of this area that's, it's not very well traveled. It's a kind of what you would consider a backwater in Italy, but it's an agricultural area. It's not a touristed area at all, but it's got this amazing vernacular architecture. And it's all stone. There is some wood structure, but the thing about the buildings in the landscape, they're not separated. They're really part of the same vocabulary of materials. So on the image on the right, if you look up the mountains in the back, the buildings are very much the same materials as the landscape. And there's also a certain amount of care in how the landscape is terraced and planted and that sort of things. So traditional cultures, especially when scarcity is driving a lot of things, there's a particular care and conservation of materials and the land itself. So one of the things we did was work with an Italian stonemason and rebuild some of the structures. The area has been, like a lot of rural areas, has been vacated by a lot of the population, younger people moving into cities. So a lot of these old structures have fallen into disrepair and collapsed. So I was involved with a nonprofit there that was started by a friend of mine, and he is very much involved in rebuilding these structures. So we participated in that. But the stones and the buildings, again, everything is reused. So that had a real influence on my way of thinking about the value of materials and reusing things.
Michael, where was this in Italy?
Oh, it's an area. It's the Ossola Valley, which is above Milan. It's in the Piedmont, so the foothills of the Alps. It's about an hour and a half north of Milan, so it's kind of central north. It's a little finger that pushes up into Switzerland, so really Switzerland is on three sides with the Alps.
Michael, I have a question. Well, two things.
Okay.
One, do you mind if we ask questions as you go
No,
along?
please
Or
interrupt.
would you prefer to wait to the end? We always give everybody that choice. Okay, then if you don't mind.
Yeah, just jump in.
Do you know Michael Reynolds and the Earthships in Taos, New Mexico?
I know of the Earthships, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know
well,
him.
We met him years ago, and friends of ours live there. And now the tour company, international tour company I work for, and I've done that tour for them, New Mexico tour for years. We're going to visit the Earthships. Gladys and Shelley, Alberto, maybe I can get some type of reporting from there. It would be fascinating. What they do, I'll make this short and then I'll stop. What Michael Reynolds does is he uses everything around, old tires, bottles, cans, and he makes beautiful designs, and it's based on Earth like the adobe structures at Taos
Right.
Pueblo.
Mhm.
So that's enough for me to say, but it's just, they're gorgeous structures, very creative, nothing like our normals. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all.
Oh, no, it's an interesting model. They require very little heating, and if any, heating and air conditioning, and very self-sustaining. And any use of old tires is a good thing. So, kind of moving back to the University of Oregon, I was very interested in taking some of that ideas about reusing materials and applying it to my teaching there as well. So I worked with students on projects where we actually were given access to Bring Recycling, which is a building recycling center that's really wonderful, and they deconstruct buildings and have a huge yard with just a wonderful sort of array of materials that you can reuse and repurpose. So they actually gave us a building to use and access to their yard, sort of free reign. So I had a studio of students that signed on, and we built a pavilion for the recycling center. It was called the Chapel of Second Chances. It was the idea was that people could renew their vows in this little chapel, and so it's kind of recycling marriage or whatever. But anyway, it was kind of a funny idea. So, but actually, the pavilion is still in use in their facility there. But the students really designed. I was sort of a facilitator, but they designed the structure, and then we found materials and made the thing on site, tore it down, took it to the university, and re-erected it. And that's the image you see here. So everything on this is either reused or repurposed in some way. I think the only thing that we actually bought were some fasteners, bolts and that sort of thing. But everything else came out of piles of various materials. So this is kind of the image from above. The big panels were actually part of a big backdrop for the orchestra in Eugene, Oregon, and they recycled those, so we got access to them and used them for the roof. So you have this kind of stair-stepping roof with a skylight, and it was a wonderful kind of experience. It was all based on consensus design. So this, essentially for all the major decisions, the students had to agree. We went through a whole process of different approaches and that sort of thing. And so the idea of consensus-based design is that you really get buy-in from all of the students. Once they decide as a group on a direction, then they really become this team, rather than the usual model in architecture school is you have 15 students and they're all working on their own design and they're all sort of in competition. And it was just an amazing shift to see students who are used to working individually come together and focus as a group, as a team. And it's just amazing to me.
I have a question.
Okay.
How do you ensure buy-in of all the students? Like, how does that, I've had some experience with that kind of consensus. And a lot of times it's the loudest people, which is the guys. And
Uh-huh.
It doesn't end up being as consensusy as I would have liked. So I wondered how you worked with that.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I was lucky or I followed the process. I'm glad to share it with you all. It's developed by this guy named Steve Bedaines, who's a architect and teacher in Washington, Seattle, and it's a rather involved process. Some of it is breaking down their will. You just have these very long meetings, and they can't really leave until they make a decision. And so there's a lot of discussion, and there's always students who, have different opinions, and they want to go their own way, and they stick to the very end. But after a while, it's just obvious that the thing needs to go in a certain direction, and they eventually give up. So it's a lot of it is attrition, but I think most importantly, discussion, having a moderator who. My job was just to lend expertise and not try to force things in a certain direction. But I think with enough discussion and reasoning, it was quite a hard process, to be honest. But you have to kind of stick with it, and it really helps to have a neutral moderator, someone who can at least pretend to be neutral.
Were you the neutral moderator as well as the expert?
Yes.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
See, this brings up a whole lot of questions in my mind that were related to the process and the teaching model, but it's difficult to kind of focus on the climate change and the natives and stuff like that and get off on that. So can we have a conversation about that separately sometime?
Sure.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I can go back and review my process and probably be more articulate about it as well. But I did it more than once, 2 or 3 times, and each time I had a really great experience. But in the beginning, especially, and there was a whole series of steps, of getting the students to go in a certain direction. I'm not going to dwell on it, but just as an example, we started with a little design sketch of a little pavilion or something, and they design it to a certain point and then stop, and then they'd have to hand it to another group, so they'd be in small groups. They'd design to a certain point, and then they'd stop, and they'd give it to somebody else to develop it. So there's this whole process of giving ego diminishment. So anyway, it was just a great experience. It's the best experience I've had as a teacher. So, okay, moving forward, hopefully. And there's the finished. Also had students who were, really interested in the environment and the whole idea. So that was good. Okay, so another thing I've done is writing for architecture journals. My daughter was teaching in China, so I asked my editor if I could do something in China when I went to visit her, and I was really interested in this landscape architect in Beijing, His name is Kung Jung Yu, and he does amazing work. So I got permission to go and visit him, and he was agreeable to that. So he's just personally, he's an amazing guy. He started out in a little village way out in the middle of China somewhere, and it was farming community, not really a lot of access to education, but he got a sort of a minimal amount of education, and then someone has kind of seen his aptitude, and he was sort of known for riding to the rice fields with on the back of a oxen reading. So someone noticed him and recommended him for a high school, which is a pretty big deal in where he was coming from. And he went to high school. He sort of started out at the bottom of the class, ended at the top of the class. He went to agricultural college in China. Again, he excelled, and ended up at the Harvard School of Design. And he was just a really humble, wonderful person. I mean, I went to the place, my daughter and I, and it's this huge building in Beijing that's his firm only, like 5 stories, big atrium building. I walk up through this building, there's hundreds of people in cubicles. It's the biggest landscape architecture firm in China. And they take me to his office, his corner office, and I go in, and it's just full of plants. It looks like, and it's just books strewn everywhere, papers, and this guy who is just really warm and wonderful. But what he's doing, the first project he did that got attention was at Xinjiang School of Architecture. They built this university, and they ran out of money for the landscape, and so they hired him, and he came up with this idea of just planting rice, just making it into an agricultural landscape, but in such a way that was really beautiful. Just kind of taking, a common material, a common crop, and doing things with it that made it wonderful, and kind of something the students could participate in. So he has these sort of areas of rice, and then these little walkways with places for students to study in them. And of course, there's other plants, there's trees and other native plants and that sort of thing around, but it's mostly rice fields. And it sort of brought this idea of a productive landscape, which is very important to my thinking, that the landscape can do things beyond, just be something to look at. So students actually harvest the rice and sell it. So, and it's become a really popular thing there. So that's sort of how he got his start. And then he got into developing really large projects on a big scale. And this is the before picture of one of his projects, kind of an industrial brownfield type of area on a river. And he does a lot of work on waterways. But it's just looking at it, it's not very diverse. It's kind of been abused, as you can see. There's a lot of bare soil and that sort of thing. So, after several years, this is what it looks like. He uses a lot of natives and a lot of techniques to capture water, terracing. You can see there's an area of trees along the river now, and just kind of amazing transformation of that area. Looking at the field of sunflowers, and just you can imagine what this looks like to a pollinator. It's just kind of an amazing field of wildflowers. Okay, so anyway, he's very well known in China for he has a saying called befriending the flood. So the tendency in managing stormwater and rivers flooding, that sort of thing, is to build walls on either side of the river. And there's a real movement now, as we'll see, to take those walls down, give the water someplace to go, and in that way absorbing the flood waters in some way. So I mean, if you just build walls, then you're just sending that water to somebody else, basically. So flooding downstream.
Hi, Michael, please, can
Yes.
I trouble you a bit?
Sure.
Just a little question. With the advent of climate change, we do see in some areas, like where I am currently in Portugal, we're experiencing a lot of drought.
Right.
What do you think in terms of landscaping opportunities in areas like this, who's suffering from? Obviously, you have two levels of problem. One, they have drought due to climate change, and at the same time, they want something that would cool the temperature down so there's less heat and warmth in the atmosphere. What do you think landscaping could do in this circumstance?
Well, any way you can capture that water, with things that can, like terracing or rain gardens, anything that can slow the water down, which is really what we all should be doing. And, it's a tough one because, drought is a hard thing to really fight. I mean, there's not a lot you can do in terms of changing the amount of water you get, but plants that are adapted to that arid condition, I would think, would be a good thing. And just getting as much, root system, the more planting you have, the more water you're going to hold. But really looking at plants that are suited for adaptation, drier climates.
Michael, may I make a comment to Terrain's
Absolutely.
question? Thank
Sure.
you. I work with the Pueblo in New Mexico, and they've been, for millennia, they've been farmers in a very dry area. And one of the constructs that they used, I don't know if they still use it, it's at Bandelier, which is a national monument. It's what are called waffle gardens. So think of that old waffle iron. And then they would plant their three sisters, the corn, beans, and squash, in each one of the little squares. And then they would and they help each other. The beans are nitrogen fixers for the corn, and the leaves of the squash help everything from getting so hot. And then they would mulch, of all things, with rocks. So it was like I have such high regard for the indigenous around the world and the way they've been able to cope with changing climate over the millennia, not just our catastrophic. Thank you.
May I make a comment also?
Sure.
Something that people have begun doing is bringing animals in, because the animals leave manure behind, and also their irregular footsteps both push it into the soil and dig the soil up a little bit. And that has been shown to be helpful for retaining, whatever kind of little water that you get.
Yep. There's a really interesting guy who's working in the New Mexico area in Arizona. He's doing a lot with capturing stormwater in, I think it's Phoenix, in that area, maybe Albuquerque. But anyway, his name is Lancaster. I can look it up and get it to you guys if you'd like. But he has worked in Africa, and just learning from these farmers who work in really arid conditions, and adapted some of that to the southwestern United States. So, okay. So moving on to New Orleans, I got to interview a guy named David Wagner, who's in an architecture firm, Wagner and Ball, and he started, he's a great guy, and he's really concerned about New Orleans, of course, because New Orleans is sinking, and it's also, got lots of flooding problems and that sort of thing. So he started years ago, probably 15 years ago or so, he started something called the Dutch Dialogues, where he brought over people from the Netherlands who, as you know, the Dutch have been working with water, flood water, for centuries, because a lot of the country is below sea level. So they are quite experts on how to deal with flood waters and sea level rise and that sort of thing. So they have a bit of a head start. So what the Dutch are doing more and more of these days are, again, taking these walls down, these dikes down, and giving the floodwaters places to go. So David Wagner and his group have done a similar thing in New Orleans. In this image, taking a canal that was underground and opening it up, and turning it into really kind of a park, but a park like the Chinese example, a park that is, a wonderful place to be for people and planting and that sort of thing. So New Orleans has a history, like most cities, of what they call pump and pipe. Or pipe and pump. So you pipe it out away as quickly as possible and pump it out, or whatever you need to do to get rid of it quickly. And this is actually contributed to the subsiding soils in New Orleans, because the pumps run to keep them clear. Apparently they pump a lot of the groundwater out as well, and that helps, that contributes to the subsidence of the ground, so the sinking of the ground. So David Wagner is in this New Orleans water plan, Greater New Orleans water plan, has come up with ways of absorbing the shock of a flood in the landscape, and the more you do that, the more water you absorb into the aquifer. So that's also something that's very important. And you kind of a cross section through one of his projects, you can kind of see, you know, the root system of the planting, again, slows the water, holds the water. So it's very important to also make it something that's available for people and a wonderful place to be. So that's kind of his work, and he's looking at the whole region as well. One thing all the dams and the dikes and all of that have done is they've reduced the amount of silt that settles in the lower areas in the delta, and you know, it's so the ground is not sort of replenished with soils. So you know, he's looking at the big view of how to sort of mitigate that, take down some of the walls, more wetlands, and that sort of thing. Okay, so on a much smaller scale, how does all this relate to the Omni Center? And this is a look, kind of a before picture of the Omni Center grounds, and just looking at, just kind of panning. What you see is a lot of yard, a lot of grass, but it's, you know, it's got some good things going. We've got some wildflower areas, and so, whoops. There's some rain barrels and that sort of thing, but mostly there is a lot of lawn, and so a lot of what we'd like to do is get rid of that. We don't want to get rid of all the lawn, of course, but just reduce it as much as possible. So looking at a kind of early plan, done a couple of years ago, things have evolved a little bit, but I think I'm actually going to reduce this so I can use my pointer. Can you guys see that? Okay. So the general idea, again, is to get as much natives around the perimeter as possible. We have a small area for possibly a vegetable garden. One of our first projects you'll see in a minute is a patio, just to make this more a part of the main part of the Omni Center. Move the storage to the back to kind of screen the parking lot behind. A kind of contemplative garden, just kind of a little meditative garden that could be surrounded by planting. Butterfly garden here on the edge. We'll look at also looking at things that might serve the community, an herb garden and that sort of thing. And then ideas about stormwater. As you'll see, we have a lot of water coming down from Liquor World parking lot to the parking lot of the restaurant, and it comes down, and we've got quite a bit of erosion right here. So that's something that we could start to mitigate with a bioswale here that we'll talk about in a minute. Okay. So our first project was a patio. So here you see the beginnings here. It helps if you have some good labor, but it's, Richard Tiffany here is instrumental on the right, was really instrumental person in this patio project. And he did it all in his bare feet, which was kind of amazing. So just starting to level the landscape. We put in a drain for rainwater. So we have rain barrels up at the upper part of the image up here. And then that will run into this pipe and then into hopefully a
Hello, Dick.
rain garden. I'm sorry?
3D.
Oh,
Today?
Dick is here, or he was. So anyway, it's important to get those kinds of infrastructure things in as you move along. Here's Richard checking the level. Of course, you want the patio to drain, so getting the water away is important. And then also, Richard did this wonderful sort of herringbone pattern in the patio. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, but it's really a nice touch. So we used concrete bricks that were reused. We bought them from a guy living way out in the country. So it's, again, the idea of reusing materials. You save all the embodied energy that goes into those materials. It's very important. And it's just a very efficient way to get a reduced amount of energy that is used in making materials. And then the finished patio. So the concrete brick in the field, the main part of the patio, and then is trimmed with a clay brick. And so reuse of a concrete material, for example, concrete is responsible for about 8% of the greenhouse gases. Concrete is they say it's the second only to water in the amount of materials that's used on Earth. So it's a major contributor. So any way you can reduce that and reuse concrete is an important thing to do. So that's our first project. We got a grant to help with that from some of the pandemic relief. And one thing that's important about the garden to me is that it's should have a face to the community, should be welcoming to the neighborhood. So we hope to eventually have a gateway so the community can come in, and as I say, herb gardens and that sort of thing that the community could participate in, or just harvest herbs and that sort of thing. And maybe a small vegetable component. This is a part of a garden in Seattle. That's a community garden outside of Chinatown. Very vibrant place. We probably won't have room for something like this, but a small herb garden or something like that that could welcome the community is a good idea, really important, I think. And then a place for children. So having a place or activities that children can participate in. I know that Gladys and the Quakers have already done some things with kids. So I think that's an important aspect as well.
Michael,
Yeah.
is the entry that you're thinking of, is that kind of the design you're thinking about? Because that's a really cool entry.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a Japanese or Chinese
Yeah,
model.
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I was, you know, we have the butterfly garden down here, and then something. This is actually kind of moved over here probably, but yeah, something along here, so that along Bertha Street, that the neighborhood could feel kind of drawn into. Yeah, I think that would be nice. And there are a number of plants that, like vines, that would grow on that gate. That would be nice. Our one of our first workshops was a butterfly garden workshop. We had Jane and Don Steinkraus, who Don is a entomologist at the university, and Jane is really well versed in native plants that attract insects. So that was a really wonderful thing. All of our workshops are on the Omni YouTube channel, so you can go back and look at those if you haven't seen them. But this was a great one. There lots of good information on what to plant and the importance of native plants in general, and especially to promote wildlife. So that was a wonderful thing. And then all of our workshops in some way, of course, are embodied hopefully in our garden.
Is
So
anyone
this was,
else having problems with audio?
I'm sorry.
I don't think so, Quinn. Has
Okay.
anybody else had problems with audio?
Okay, sorry to interrupt, must be at my end.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So this is looking at the butterfly garden that we put in last year. It's actually grown up quite a bit. I'm gonna keep replanting things until it gets to be a full lush garden. But I've expanded it a little bit, and it'll be an ongoing thing as we learn. We learn what works there in that particular place and that sort of thing.
Well, tell us, Michael, what plants did you put in the butterfly garden?
Well, there's a lot of milkweed. There's quite a bit of gaura. These are mountain mint back here. Quite a variety. There's a couple of buttonbush back here, which are kind of wonderful looking plants, and they're also good for pollinators. Yeah, so that's the basics. There's quite a variety. I don't remember every plant, but at some point I'm gonna I want to have signage, because the intent of this whole project is that eventually it'll become a demonstration educational garden. So I want to have signs at each piece that describes what's going on and what the plants are, and maybe label each major plant.
Michael, my friend Mike Karsis wants to build or create a butterfly garden at the high school, and he's been looking for someone to advise him on that. Could you do that, or someone could advise him on creating this butterfly garden there?
Yeah, I mean, I know a bit about the plants, but I also, Jane Steinkraus would be a good resource. But yeah, one or the other of us, that would be a great project.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Let me add just one thing. This is Lolly. Shelley, remember Alyssa Morrison? She used that same book, I think, that Michael is using up by Talamy.
Living Landscape. Living Landscape.
No, gosh, what's the book called? That's a Talamy book, the Drake and Talamy. Is it Living Landscape?
That's
okay.
Living Landscape.
Yeah. Lissa Morrison gave us a talk on that. So there's another resource, just to remind you of Lissa.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all.
Lissa was sort of our first, when I first started this project, she was our first sort of advisor. And I actually have video of her going around and telling me how to, you know, in this particular bed, we first put down cardboard and mulch on top of that, lots of mulch, and let that sit, you know, through the winter, and then planted just to kill the grass, get the grass back. And then you could plant through the cardboard and the mulch. So that's a good place to start. And we're expanding that. All of this back area here is now mulch, and some of this. And we'll just kind of wrap the perimeter eventually of the backyard. We want to leave an area around the patio for lawn and that sort of thing, so we can expand our events back there. But otherwise, ideally, you want 70% natives, 70% natives a minimum, to 30% non-natives. That's a kind of a good measure to start with.
Art, do you mean by that it doesn't, you don't have to have 100% natives in order for it to be non-dangerous to pollinators and all?
Right. I would think that a lot of the 30% would be lawn, you know, grasses and that sort of thing, which is
yeah,
hard to,
yeah.
I mean, even in our case, you know, you want some lawn, you know, so people can sit around and they're not sitting in the middle of a bed. So, yeah, but 70-30 is a good place to start. And this is a close up of the bed showing all the little labels. Then we had a native bee workshop with Olivia Klein, and it was really great talk she gave about the importance of wild bees. That's her area of research, and very important pollinators for agriculture and for other types of native plants. And they're really being decimated by insecticides and herbicides and that sort of thing. So she is very much involved in trying to convince people in agriculture and that sort of thing to plant things that would support native bee populations. And you know, it really helps agriculture to have pollinators. And so finding places for native plants that support the pollinators. And part of that workshop was building bee hotels or bee houses. So I built a couple. This is the one that's at Omni. And now we're getting pretty good occupancy, actually. Several of these, the bees, native, the solitary bees, they'll lay their larva in a tube and they fill it up with this kind of cellulose material that they make somehow. And then just a wall, and then another egg, and then a wall, and they just keep going. So here's actually a video of that in process, and the one at my house. So you see the bee coming out head first, and then she backs in, lays an egg, and then she'll go back in and put another layer of material on top of that, and then come back out. So, I mean, it's just, you know, it's just one of those things that's really wonderful to watch. You see these holes starting to fill up, and just watching that whole process is fun. And then Bernetta Hinteser, again, all of these things are available online. But Bernetta did a nature walk with us, a native plant walk, where we spend a couple hours just walking around, identifying plants. How do you identify them? What are they? What's available? What do they do? And she is a wealth of information on natives.
I love that picture of Bernetta.
Yeah, yeah. If you go on a walk with Bernetta, if it's a mile walk, you spend a couple hours because it's like 10 feet and then you stop, and she notices things that most of us don't. But anyway, I really enjoy it. And this was on Mike Ross and is it Kay Ellen Ross?
Jane Ellen.
Jane Ellen, I'm sorry. Have 100 acres that they've dedicated as a protected landscape with the land trust. And so we walked on their land there that's going to be preserved. So it's a really important thing. And most recently, we had a stormwater workshop with Jane Maginot from the University County Extension Service. She's a stormwater person and really reinforced the importance of slowing the water down, absorbing it, reducing pollution, and that sort of thing in how we shape our yards and landscape. So in terms of stormwater, we have, again, I'm going to have to, we have a rain garden it's not shown on this, but we've developed an idea about a rain garden here that will take water from the roof and from the overflow from the rain barrels there. And also, very importantly, there's a bioswale in this area. So we get all of that runoff from the parking lots. And one thing that a bioswale can do, there are certain plants that absorb petroleum and reduce its impact. So there's considerable pollution coming from automobiles down from those parking lots in the street. So, and it goes right into our that area of yard there. So planting that with what they call phytoremediation, or plants that remediate the pollution, is an important thing. So what came out of that workshop, just talking to Jane Maginot about our situation there, she connected me with the Illinois River Water Partners, Illinois River Watershed Partners, and they actually have grant money that they apply for through the American Rescue Initiative. And I just got an email recently that they put in for $20,000 to put in a bioswale in this area. So hopefully that will be approved. But other things, we're again, rain barrels, some kind of water catchment for the roofs. We've got some already, but increasing that and using that water for irrigation is important. And just looking at how that works in terms of parking. So the sheet flow off the parking comes down into a swale. So it's a depression in the landscape, and then plants that again absorb that, and then instead of just flowing down the street to the next person, you absorb that water into the ground. It helps recharge the aquifer and help the stormwater situation in general. and just an idea of what those things look like, taking water from the street or parking lot and channeling it into an area that's planted and recessed to absorb that water can really help slow the flow down. And just a project that I worked on for Donna and Kelly Mulholland in their front yard. So a terrace landscape, terraces really help slow the water. They live on a hill and the water comes down this way and it's coming down here into this drain. That drain flows down under this and into this rain garden. So this is that kind of depressed area or recessed area in the landscape that absorbs that water, slows it down, and so it's it's a good idea to have plants in there that can live with a lot of water sometimes and then dry out. So Alyssa Morrison actually did the advised us on planting, what kind of planting to put in there. So it's good to have some expert input.
Yeah, Michael, my son did that stonework.
Oh, that's right. Ben Buonanito did the stonework. Yeah. And then this is urbanite, which is actually broken up concrete. Yeah. And Ben did some amazing, beautiful details. And this is kind of shows one of them with the water coming down from the driveway and then under this little tunnel area and into the rain garden, little bridge across that. It's a great example of what you can do with a material like concrete, which is, often just, you see it in piles, and everywhere, discarded, but it's essentially a great stone product you can use on projects like this. And I think it looks great. And so I think that's, one thing that's important to think about is that, the Western kind of concept of beauty, again, is this kind of yard landscape that's, just a plain of grass, and really beginning to change the perception of beauty, and the things that natives can do to the landscape, I think is part of our point here with the Omni Gardens. As I say, I would really like to see it become a model landscape. It's ideal because it was originally a residential yard, a residential house, and it's the Omni Center, and it can really show what you can do with that kind of landscape. So I really think it's important to have examples like that in the community. So I think that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions or comments or anything like that.
Michael, this is Lolly again. I loved your presentation. We've tried to implement most of the things you've done in the front of our house, in front of our field, which is a straight fencing, which is about a 1.5 acre field. We have a bird and butterfly garden, a small volleyball court, a meditation labyrinth, and then a shade garden under trees that has seating in it. And then in the back of the house, to one side of the surface of the root cellar is my herb garden. And then down below that, the next bench down is the great big canning garden, all organic. And then there's the orchard. So this was just thrilling for me to hear you talk about it. And I bet for Gladys, that will be gorgeous once all of that takes place at Omni. I have to go. And so I just wanted to thank you a whole bunch. It was wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you,
that's great
Lolly.
to hear.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask what what the roof material is that you're using the water that's running off the roof to irrigate the plants?
Well, in the case of Omni Center, it's metal.
Okay. I
Uh-huh.
didn't know. I mean, you know, a lot of places have shingles, and I
Yeah.
just didn't know what Omni had.
Yeah. You could, I mean, you could use either. You know, there's a little bit of question about the petroleum in the asphalt shingles, but it's really a fairly stable material. You would probably have a less of a tendency to water your vegetables with something off the asphalt roof, but I don't know of any research on that, but that would make sense.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there is research on that, and that's why I was asking. And you know, it's the same thing with the use of tires in the buildings. And I know Wally's not here, and you know, that's not today's topic, but I do think it is important. I mean, the concrete is great because it really doesn't change any, but the use of tires in these buildings, as the water gets in, and eventually, I mean, they leach out. People use a lot of tires in their gardens and stuff, and they are beginning to find out that that's a real problem. I mean, they're finding out stuff about the plastic that people put over the soil to keep the weeds down is actually leaching phthalates and stuff into the food that's grown there. So those things are really important to consider.
Right.
Gwen, have you heard anything about cardboard? We use lots of cardboard. It doesn't have a lot of ink on it. It has a little bit of ink on it.
Most inks, I think, are vegetable inks these days. I think that a lot of places have gone to that. And I think cardboard's actually a really good choice. You know, there's a little bit of glues and stuff, but that's really kind of minor in comparison. One of the things that I've been reading about a lot is organic farmers who specifically are using lots of plastic in their greenhouses, in their as cover for their early crops, as weed depleting, and they're beginning to find out that it's really detrimental. Unfortunately,
I've been kind of impressed with the cardboard. I mean, it's, you know, a layer or two of cardboard. You know, I put it down a couple of years or a year ago or so ago, and it's still there under the mulch. So it's, and I haven't seen a lot of evidence of the glues. They seem to deteriorate. So hopefully they're kind of an organic material.
well, but the cardboard actually is going to add to the soil too when it does break down. So you know,
Right.
That's kind of a good thing.
Right. Right.
Quinn, is that a topic that you feel like might be a discussion for this forum? It sounds like you've already started some research on it.
Do something. I'm kind of very into this kind of stuff, and I have a little bit more free time now. I did just finish my dissertation, and
congratulations!
Thank you all. So I'm free. Oh my God.
Well,
yes, I could consider doing something like that.
Okay. Can you just give me a title and a blurb?
Oh wait, not like next month or anything.
Well, yeah, you could do it next month. Yeah.
I kind of need a little.
You need a little more time. Okay.
Yeah.
She just finished her dissertation.
Oh my God, it's like someone who just finished a marathon and is like barely able to talk, and you know, throw a towel over my shoulders and let me walk it off for a few days, okay?
Okay.
What she needs is just to take her out for a beer, not to have her.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't need, I swore I would never think again. You know?
That's not too likely.
Yeah.
You remind me, Quinn, I'm taking you out for a beer and dinner as soon as we can.
That'd be great. Thank you.
But you have
But
to
anyway,
you have to tell me about your dissertation, but just a little
okay.
bit.
Well, but tell me now, like, what would be the general topic that would fit in of,
Can we let's let Michael have this time and then we can talk. I will probably see
Okay,
you.
okay.
Isn't the Omni open mic tonight?
Yeah, I can't come though, so
Okay.
let's talk next week sometime.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Michael. Got really derailed there.
No, that's fine.
Before we go, Terrain, did you send that photo of your garden in Portugal to everyone? Gladys, did you get it?
No, I just
No.
sent it to you because I wasn't sure if I should send it to everybody. So I only sent it to
Send
you.
it to me. Could you make Terrain a co-host so he can
Okay.
show the
Oh,
Portugal?
okay.
Let me try and send it all again. Just a second. Okay. Oh.
Okay, you're co-host now, Terrain.
Let me try and share photos. Sorry, I'm having some.
I wonder if I can get it. I'd have to get. See, I'd have.
I can send it again to everybody, but probably via email rather than.
If you send it to Gladys, I can't get into my email right now.
Okay, I can send it to Gladys now.
Okay.
Okay.
I send it now.
Okay.
It's very manicured.
Yes,
They-
I must say, the Portuguese tend to have a very good thing when it comes to gardening. I think and that garden has been there since I think 17 something, in the 1700s. I sent it.
It's
Gladys.
not come through yet.
I've just sent it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's underneath. I really wish I could. Let me try and see if I can share from the.
I have it, but I can't get into my email on this computer
Oh.
because of the.
Okay. Let's see here.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I can. Maybe I can get into it. Gladys, did you get it yet?
I did get it. I'm downloading them now.
Okay.
But Terrain, if one of y'all can do it, it will be quicker probably.
Okay.
Okay, I've got it. If I
Got it?
well, wait a minute. Let me see. I might. Okay, let me see now if I can. Now I've lost Zoom. Okay. Now, okay, no, it's too complicated for me. I don't think I can pull this off.
There.
They're not wanting to download.
There, now, wait a minute. Let me see if I can get into Zoom. Share screen.
Yep.
There it is. Do you see it?
No.
No, I'm screen sharing. What do I do?
I think
Oh,
Michael needs to stop his screen sharing before you can share
Oh,
yours.
oh.
Okay, before I stop, I was just going to pass this along. This is Brad Lancaster, rainwater harvesting for drylands and beyond.
Oh,
So
wow.
he works in again the arid West. So
Hmm.
Rain, if you're interested,
Okay.
it's harvestingrainwater.com.
Harvestingrainwater.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. Water harvesting is going to get more important all the time.
Yeah. He's a very interesting guy and does good work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, I will stop sharing.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
Now there's one, and now there's another one, but I don't know how to get to the other one. I have to. Okay, do you want to talk about that, Terrain?
This is the communal garden at the local Lyra Park here. And when I look at the plaque there, it was first set out, I think in 1600, the 1600s. That's when the garden first was set out by the local farmers.
Wow.
The community is a very agrarian community, so they do a lot of planting and things of that nature. And the trees, you can see, it's on a lower level, and then on top you have the trees. And these trees have been there for a very, 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 very long time. And the red building you see in the background, that's the town hall, or what you might call the municipal hall.
Okay.
We couldn't see the church. There's a local church probably towards the left side of the screen. You can only see some bright light up there, but that's the church.
Okay.
The church has been there, I think, since the 1400s, and it's still in use today. So the Portuguese they've done quite well in terms of managing these gardens, and the effort they make is incredible, because down on towards, I didn't take that part of it, but down towards the right-hand side, the extreme right of the garden, it's a pool of water with some local fish and I think some duck in there, duck and ducklings in there. So it's when Michael was talking about landscaping and the rest of it, this came to mind, and I thought maybe I should just say it. I will try and see if I can get the second picture on.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. Wait a minute, let me see if I can get it.
I'm sure you can.
There, is that it? Is it on? Do you see it?
Not yet.
Sure.
It says I'm screen sharing. I don't
I
know.
think try stopping sharing and then go back.
Yeah.
Stop share and now share screen. This one. Now can you
There it
see it?
is. Yeah, now we can see it.
Is that the pool right here?
That's a fountain. There are two fountains there. The pool is further to the extreme left, but there are two water fountains there. And this is the top level of I would say, coming out from the public road. You have to go down the stairs and then you get into the garden. So it's been like this for a while, and every maybe in the seasons, the local gardener, municipal gardener, just comes and gives it a trim, and it's been very impressive. I must say, in most of the time I go to different places, whether it's Central Park in New York or Hyde Park in London, the care that the Portuguese attached to their gardening is quite impressive, I must say. Whether large or small, is quite impressive. And when you think that this has been done for well over 200 years, this same spot, it's mind-blowing. So
I've
do the
never
job.
seen a base around a tree, the way they have the bases here. They have little circles around the bottom of the tree. What is that?
It's actually some herbs, plants that are there. It's some plants underneath. Because
Oh,
what they did, some of these shrubs you see, they are quite big, but they do trim them down, keep them in shape, but they can grow, sometime in the year, they can grow really, really big. But at the same time, at the base, they have planted some small flowers around them, and that's why they have that appearance. I wish I could send you more, but this is what they seem to be doing in their gardening. Mhm.
Beautiful.
thanks for sharing. You want me to stop sharing now?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you. Well, Michael, you have really made me very anxious to see how the garden kind of emerges over time. I didn't realize that you were going to focus on the Omni garden. That was very exciting to me. And kind of seeing the vision that you've got for it, that really is very helpful to kind of get the feel for that, because that's going to be beautiful.
I hope so. We'll keep
I had-
working on it.
I had questions about China because I've
Mhm.
been to China a few times, and every time I go, everywhere food crops are planted in a tiny little space in between these little market stalls, or anytime there's a spare field anywhere, food
Hmm.
crops are everywhere.
Huh.
So I was wondering about that's really a Chinese sensibility, planting food where you can, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I would have to feed 1 billion people.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But they've taken over so much land with these huge apartment buildings, which they're renting out to Saudi Arabians, or selling to Saudi Arabians. So that's not, so they've taken over these entire villages, put these huge concrete buildings all
Yeah,
over. this-
yeah, it's incredible
Mhm.
amount of building they're doing. But they are doing some good things, like the work that I was showing,
Mhm.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're also under pressure, to do things about climate change,
Mm.
because they have terrible flooding there, and
Mm.
pressure from the people.
Mhm.
So
And the pollution, I mean, the food crops are great, but eventually they're gonna catch on that they're growing food in places where the soil and the air and the water are all horrible. And it's kind of an issue. I mean, we had a guy come to speak a few years back to one of the colloquiums at the university, and he was talking about a remediation of the San Francisco Bay area, and that somebody had hit on this idea, probably from China, to plant rice there. And the rice was really great because it was cleaning up. It was a loading, it was a place where there were shipping containers and big ships, and there was just an oil slick on the water at all times. And he was like, and so we planted rice, and it's really doing a great job of sucking all this stuff out of the water. And I was like, well, then what do you do with the rice? And he said, oh, we sell it.
Hmm.
I mean, these are scientists. They're not thinking of the next step. They're only concerned with solving the problem at hand.
Interesting.
And that's an issue.
I didn't think about the toxins that it was sucking up, but I was thinking about the studies that we have done here, that we have learned about here with rice producing methane, and about how much water rice takes and the production of methane, and wondering if the students at the university were studying that in their rice production. I don't suppose you
They
got
are actually. No, I have friends though that are doing that kind of thing, and they are trying to find ways that are there's an acronym for it, but less water use, whatever.
wet dry alternate irrigation. I know that's what Kozana Subochatev was doing, and we had her talk to us at the university. But I was wondering if you had heard they were talking about that in China, Michael.
Not that I'm aware of. No. You know, I'm 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 not an agricultural person, so
Yeah. Yeah,
Not in those loops.
yeah,
yeah,
that was outside of my wheelhouse.
yeah. But they're still doing that study. I'm sure they've advanced it, Quinn, at the production of methane with rice.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's still going on. And rice too, you know, just rice picks up a lot of organic arsenic in the soil.
Yeah,
And so that's a problem in and of itself. And the organic arsenic isn't as bad as the non-organic arsenic, which then had been used though in many places as a fertilizer, not as a pesticide decades ago, but of course being an element does not break down, and so it's still there and it's still being taken up, and that's bad. Very
yeah.
bad for our health.
Cosinus would only eat rice like once every 3 days, but I don't know if is arsenic in every soil that rice picks up. Is that
No, but it's in a lot of places where rice is grown because it used to be used for a pesticide. So it's in croplands a lot of times. And then it does occur naturally. I mean, it does occur naturally in the soil in some places.
That is a issue with the plants that you use for mitigating the petroleum products, because you have to do something. Yeah, I mean, you have to compost them separately or whatever, because they're absorbing petroleum.
Right. And that is like, okay, so one of the things the city is just starting to do is share their compost, like get all their grass scraps and stuff from everybody in the community and then compost it, add it to their, you know, compost they're already doing, and they're doing food scraps now.
Right.
But it's not a good idea to put that on your garden. A lot of places around the country have found that the pesticides and herbicides in particular, that are used on lawns to get rid of broadleaf plants, for instance, like dandelion and things people don't want to see, are broadleaf plant killers. So then when they plant spinach, you know, and even after those plants have gone through a horse and the manure is gathered and put on soil. And these are studies that have happened for decades, for a decade now at least. They're finding that those chemicals don't break down, and they are still able to reduce the resultant yield of the plants, and are in the plants as well. So
yeah. Sage's mother ruined her garden was ruined by contaminated horse manure.
yeah.
Oh my. Wow.
I just want to make people aware of it, and that I will talk about that, because people don't know, and
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of, there's so much to understand and to sort of rethink in terms of our environment, because, and this was part of my research actually, but like our water, people think, oh, if it's clear, it's good. And we probably all know that that's not true, but we just don't understand how bad it is. You can't just boil it and get rid of this stuff. Every time there's flooding in a city that has, you know, oil and underground things and fires and all the things that are burned in those fires and all the chemicals that are put on to stop the burning, all of those things are going into the water. And when they go into the aquifers, that's even worse.
Wow. Yeah.
Sorry. See, that's what I'm afraid is my talk is going to leave everybody like,
I'll advertise Quinn's talk is going to be a real downer, everybody. So bring a
This is the doomsday talk. I'll have to find a happy ending.
Yeah. Do your best.
There are things. Biochar. I'm all excited about biochar
okay.
and
Biochar's
charcoal
Okay.
to be used. It's not being done yet in a big way, but to be used to extract some of these things. Charcoal is really good
Hmm.
for that.
Well, we've got a lot of charcoal now. It's all the forest fires.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's not it. That's not. No.
So Michael is going to end his talk on a downer. That's
Right.
Well, it was very a beautiful talk, Michael, and that's very encouraging to kind of see that big picture look about what's going on, because I think that that really kind of gives us a sense of direction and potential that is very, very good.
Yeah, and thank you for your vision at Omni. and
Oh,
all-
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful.
Oh, it's something I enjoy. So,
Yeah. We'll be glad to be your hobby.
you know, if it stops being fun, I'll just quit. No.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to talk about a budget for it, though, because some of those things are going to cost some money.
Well, as I say, hopefully we're getting a grant for the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm going to be looking into grants. So.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little sunburned, you guys, so I'm going to take off.
Okay. Well,
Thank you,
thanks,
Michael.
Quinn.
And
Thank you.
Maybe I'll see
for
some
coming.
of you tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any final comments before we wrap up here? So I think we've got Alberto. You have not spoken very much. Do you have something you want to add?
Just great appreciation for Michael and his willingness to share this very interesting knowledge that he has accumulated during his career. Really, really impressive, Michael.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
you. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ken.
The only thing I would add is, it's actually quite a small thing that we're doing, but it's going to take everybody doing small things and some really big things. Of course, we have to reduce our use of fossil fuels. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
But all of these little small things will add up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope.
That's true. We hope. Yeah. We just have to do what we can. It's just such a monumental problem, and we just got to find every possible avenue to actually do what we can.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening.
thank
Well,
you,
it was-
Michael. Thanks,
It was
everybody. for coming.
great. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.